guys, Carl Cooper here with On the Black. So recently had a phone interview with Eric Simon of Amazin Avenue, and we talked about the Amazin Avenue Annual 2011, which is a new book that they just released, which is really sort of like a preview and a guide to use throughout the season for the Mets 2011. Here's actually, I'll show you guys the cover of the book. So I'm going to play the audio for you guys. Listen in. It's me and Eric chatting about this book, and then also talking about the upcoming season for the 2011 Mets. Hope you enjoy. Hey guys, Carl Cooper here with On the Black, and I am joined tonight by Eric Simon of Amazin Avenue. Hey Eric, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you, Carl?
Doing good, doing good. If you wouldn't mind, maybe just take a couple minutes and tell everybody a little bit about yourself and also Amazin Avenue.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric Simon. I run Amazin Avenue, which is the Mets site of SB Nation, which is the largest network of independent sports blogs. Amazin Avenue, it's a Mets blog. We cover the Mets really from all angles, but I guess what distinguishes us from a lot of the other Mets blogs is that we're probably a little more statistically inclined than some other ones. We like looking a little more in depth at sort of the ins and outs of the stats behind what's going on, and instead of just sort of more traditional coverage of the theme, we look in a little bit deeper and try to get more information about things. I mean, really, we just love the game, and we strive to learn as much about it as we possibly can.
Cool, yeah, and of course, I'm a big fan of the site, and as I've been visiting the site over the last few years, I've definitely picked up a few things on a statistical standpoint. So that's always been helpful. So appreciate the work you guys do over there.
Yeah, I'm glad you like it. I mean, the goal is obviously to inform ourselves, but to try to inform everybody else as well. And it's not for everybody, and we understand that. But for anybody who is interested in it, we do try to extend ourselves to folks who are trying to learn more about it. So we're always interested in getting new readers that way.
Cool. So let's, as I was saying before we started, congrats on the release of the Amazin Avenue Annual 2011, which basically is a preview for the Mets' upcoming season, I guess you could say, right?
You could say that, yeah. It's in a nutshell, it is just sort of a guide to lead fans up to the 2011 season. We've got a lot of coverage of all the players who are in camp, the players who are certain to make the team, players who are likely to make the team, and there are also guys there who probably aren't going to make the team, Oliver Perez and Luis Castillo, guys like that. And we cover a lot about the new front office. Obviously, there was some overhaul there. Omar Minaya is out. Sandy Alderson is in. A lot of his friends are in as well. So we talk about that. We talk a lot about the Mets minor leagues as well. One of our guys, Rob Castellano, he does a lot of great prospect stuff. So his top 30 Mets prospect list is in there. So even if you're not that high on the Mets coming into 2011, maybe you're a little higher on the farm system. We're looking to see who's coming down the pipe. So we've got stuff there as well. And but what we hope, not only sort of information about preview leading up to the season and stuff like that, but we hope that it'll be a reference guide as well throughout the season. Because in addition to things like the preview stuff, we also have articles by Joe Poznansky of SI.com. He wrote something about Carlos Beltran and why he thinks Carlos Beltran is underappreciated by a lot of people, and why Mets fans in particular should recognize that they really do have a superstar on their hands. And if he's gone after this year, he should go down as one of the the dozen or so best players the Mets have ever had. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't necessarily see it that way. So Joe talks a bit about that, and we've got some things on Mets history. We've got a profile on John Matlack, who's a bit of an underappreciated star of past Mets teams. The guys from Faith and Fear in Flushing, they wrote a great piece on how the Mets can sort of embrace their history a little bit more. When they opened Citi Field it wasn't obvious to people who came in that it was even a stadium where the Mets played.
Right.
So, they've rectified some of that, last year, but there's probably a lot more that they can do to embrace their own history and embrace New York National League Baseball history as well. So there's a lot of things in there, not only previewing the season, but we think there's a lot in there that people can refer back to even once the season starts and onward.
Right. And I definitely enjoyed your 2010 version, so I'm pretty certain I'm going to enjoy this one too. I mean, you guys put a lot of hard work and effort into it, and it definitely comes out really well. If you wouldn't mind, maybe talk a little bit about the process of putting together sort of a guide like this. How long did it take? When did you start? How did you get all the great writers to come together to do this? That whole process of just kind of putting together this guide, if you will.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we were fortunate this year in that we had we'd already done the book last year. So last year was a huge learning process because none of us had ever put a book together before, and and there's a surprising amount, perhaps not surprising, but there's an awful lot of work that goes into creating a book, and we were fortunate that we sort of discovered all of that last year, so we were able to reuse a lot of the things that we learned last year. It really helps to have somebody with design experience. I know there are a lot of blogs out there who have done their own annuals, and we certainly took inspiration from a lot of them. I know D-Rays Bay was one of the first to do an annual for their site, and so we thought that we could do a good job of one, and we were very lucky to find someone who was able to help us with all the design. He had layout experience and things like that, and with his expertise, we wouldn't have been able to make a book that actually looked like a book. It would have been more like a sort of like a homemade thing, and instead the final product looks like any other book you'd find on the shelf, and it's really a testament to all the work that went into it. But apart from the design, in terms of getting contributors, it's really just a matter of asking. You have nothing to lose by asking.
Right.
So that's. Well, I was fortunate to have exchanged emails with Joe Poznansky in the past about some other things that were unrelated to the book, and when we started rounding up contributors this year, well, we figured we'd shoot the moon and give it a shot, and I sent out an email to him, and he was I was a little concerned that he wouldn't have the time. He was very generous, and he offered to contribute this great article about Carlos Beltran. Of course, he covered Carlos Beltran for a number of years when he was with the Kansas City Star, and he sort of saw a lot of what we see, which is that scouts and a lot of people don't necessarily appreciate Beltran for being sort of an immense talent, because I think maybe because everything seems to come so easily to him, and he does everything so effortlessly out there. But apart from Joe, we knows about Will Leach, who writes for The New Yorker and was the founder of Deadspin and has written a number of books and stuff like that. And, he's someone that I've exchanged emails a number of times in the past, and he was happy to help out. So, as far as getting contributors, it's really, you just have nothing to lose by asking. And, in fact, even if they say no, at least they're on, you're on their radar, and they know that you're interested, and they're perhaps flattered that you even asked. So it's, that's sort of how that process works. And then, apart from the contributors, we have all of the great writers on Amazin Avenue, and, collectively we were able to churn out an astonishing amount of content in a pretty short period of time. And we started talking about the book in October, but we procrastinate and we put it off, and we didn't really get started until probably early January.
Oh wow!
And as we get closer and closer to deadline, you get into a crunch, and you start writing furiously, and you worry that you're not going to make press, and it's going to be late, and you're sort of responsible because all these other people have contributed their time and their effort to put out a book, and so you kind of realize at some point, well, we really have to do this, otherwise Joe Poznansky and some of these other people are going to be upset that they contributed for nothing. So, apart from that, it's a lot of writing. It's a lot of editing. We sort of get accustomed to writing things for a blog or another website and kind of putting it up there without a whole lot of editing. I mean, we proofread and things like that, but you don't scrutinize everything. You don't go through every detail and, make sure everything is, exactly as you want it to be. And part of that is that if something's not right, well, you hit the edit button and you can go and change it, and everybody who sees it from that point on will see the updated and revised version. But a book doesn't really work that way. Once it's printed, and if there are any mistakes there, everybody's going to know it. So, the one thing that we found that I wasn't really prepared for, and this is particularly true when you have a lot of people contributing to, and it's a big collaborative effort like what the Amazin Avenue Annual was, and that is there's certain terminology in baseball, things like home runs and left fielders and things like that different people, they don't spell differently, but they put the words together differently. Is home run one word or is it two words? Is left fielder one word or two words? Things like that. And because different people have sort of grown accustomed to doing it one way or the other, in order to put a book together that is supposed to be cohesive in some way, we had to develop a style guide and actually be sure that every time we wrote home run, we made it two words. In case you're curious, home run is two words, not one word. At least that seems to be the consensus, around other baseball publications. So, there's little things like that you kind of don't realize go into putting a book together. And, as far as the editing process, it's a lot of reading of the same articles, the same chapters over and over again. It's a lot of proofreading stat tables and things like that. The writing and the putting it together is, it's very rewarding and enjoyable. And, working with so many great people is rewarding and enjoyable as well. But the editing process I could probably do without.
I hear you. No, that's good insight, because you're right. It is a little bit different from blogging than putting together, a book that's going to be out there on stands and stuff like that. So, but hey,
you expect people to pay money for is sort of, it's a whole different ballgame. I can put anything up on the internet, and if nobody likes it, well, at least you don't have to pay anything for it. You can't complain if you're getting it for free, but when you expect people to plunk down $10 or $15, they should have some reasonable expectation of quality, I think.
Right. Well, as I was actually going through it, one part that I really I like the whole thing, but one part that kind of stands out to me, actually, chapter 1, which is done by you, the part about the good and the bad, and how you break down some of the players and sort of their seasons, and I like that, because I think it kind of really tells the story of the Mets from last year, the good and the bad, and how some of the players did and stuff like that. Is there, obviously you want everyone to read the entire book, but is there one chapter or one area of the book, that is kind of your favorite, that stands out, if you will?
Well, I think my stuff is excellent. There's not a single chapter in here that I don't think is outstanding.
Right.
We're lucky that we've got a lot of great writers on staff at Amazin Avenue, and that, again, we had so many good contributors. Is that, it's good writing. It's not just good writing about the Mets, but there's a lot of really well-written stuff in here. My chapter is fine, but, there's a lot of great stuff by Sam Page, who's one of our writers at Amazin Avenue. He's done some great stuff. The chapter by Greg Prince and Jason Fry is terrific. Matthew Callan has written a great piece. There's a really funny piece by James Canongeiser called Glavatage, which is, it's sort of this conspiracy theory about how, and it was concocted by the community at Amazin Avenue, so they've sort of inadvertently contributed to a chapter in the book, but
nice.
It's conspiracy theory about how, before Tom Glavine came to the Mets, that he got together with John Sherholtz, and they agreed. John Sherholtz, of course, the general manager of the Braves at the time, and they sort of came up with this plan where Tom Glavine would come to the Mets and, sort of not pitch well intentionally and sort of drive them into oblivion, and in the process elevate the Braves to subsequent division championships. And so that was sort of a fun one to read. As far as the one I wrote, there's a section on the 2010 Mets, and as reluctant as a lot of people probably are to relive the 2010 season, I think, as with any history lesson, there are things to be learned from it that I think we can apply moving forward. And so the point of the chapter that I wrote, which is it's called 10 for Ben, and as you mentioned, it's basically 10 items from last year, and there's a good side and a bad side. So, whether it's Jason Bay and, how he hit horribly. In general, he didn't hit very well, but he was terrible on the road. He was actually quite good at Citi Field, which is sort of interesting at Citi Field. You've got Jeff Francoeur, who was terrific for the first week of the season, and a lot of the beat writers were very excited about that, and then he was terrible the rest of the way, much to nobody's surprise. So I think there's sort of a lot to learn from what happened in 2010. And of course, we also have our interview with R.A. Dickey, with Sam Page, who actually went to the same high school as R.A. Dickey, albeit a number of years apart. So that was something that we had originally posted on the site, but we reworked and included that in the book.
Yeah, and that's a really good interview. That was a nice job by Sam.
It's fantastic, and and a lot of that is a credit to R.A. Dickey, who's just very open and warm, and and really kind of an interesting. He's an interesting guy, but he's also a good interview, and it's refreshing because most active ball players don't give good interviews. It's not because they're not interesting people, but they've sort of been trained by PR staffs and things like that to not say anything that's potentially offensive or inflammatory, or and the result of that is that they end up not being that interesting, and they end up sort of saying the same things over and over again. So it's really nice when you get a guy like R.A. Dickey who will actually speak his mind without being insulting to anyone. He'll just sort of tell you the way things are. And we also have another interview with Andy McCulloch of the Star-Ledger, who is, he covers the Mets beat for the Ledger, and he's interesting to me because, because he's been quicker to embrace more advanced statistics than a lot of his beat writing counterparts, and it's sort of an interesting take on it because it's not so much here's what the other beat writers do wrong, but you sort of understand why beat writers aren't necessarily quick to embrace some of the stats, because if you're going to like FIP, for instance, which is fielding independent pitching, it's not that difficult a concept, but if you have a 700-word column to write, are you going to take 300 words of that to explain to the average fan what FIP is, or are you just going to use ERA, which is a reasonable facsimile of FIP? It at least gets the point across in most cases, and so it's not clear that it's worth the effort to most writers to use advanced stats, because it ends up just making more work for them to explain it to sort of your average fan who hasn't come across those stats before. So so that's sort of that was a fun interview for me, because Andy's he's been a supporter of ours, and he does a lot of great work at the Ledger. Nice.
Yep. Okay. Cool. Chapter 7, written by Grant Brisby. Have hope, Mets fans. It's a really good title, and it kind of leads into my next question. Do you have hope this year? I mean, what are your expectations of the team in 2011?
I don't have any expectations, and I think that's probably rare, because I think most Mets fans, at least judging by what I read on Twitter and other places, I think most Mets fans are pretty down about the team in general. I mean, obviously the whole ownership and Bernie Madoff situation, it casts a pall over everything right now. But I'm just really excited for baseball to be back, and I think I have some expectations. I think the Mets will actually be better than most people think they're going to be. They weren't an awful team last year. If they had been a little luckier, they would have been a 500 team. They're basically a 500. It's not inconceivable that Jason Bay will hit better, that Jose Reyes will hit better, that Carlos Beltran will be healthier and hit better. So there are a number of areas where they can improve. But, I don't think that they'll compete with the Phillies. That seems unreasonable, especially because the Mets starting rotation it's not great. It could be okay. Obviously, with Yohan Santana out for what looks like the first half at least, that's going to be tough. But I think they have an interesting group of guys, and I think more than anything, I'm kind of excited just to see them play. Apart from what happens with Oliver Perez, who nobody likes, and Luis Castillo, who most people don't like, although I think he'll probably be on the opening day roster. It's just a good group of guys. It seems like they'll be a fun team to root for. And I think the fact that most people either have no expectations of them or low expectations of them, may work in their favor a little bit. Some will say they'll fly under the radar because nobody's really counting on anything out of them. But I don't know. I think they'll be a fun team, and I think, the normal caveat if everybody can stay healthy, I think they'll surprise some people, and I wouldn't put money on them making the playoffs, but I think if they played out the season and they somehow ended up with a wild card, the rest of the National League is not terribly strong.
Right.
Their biggest competition might be from the Braves. The Braves or the Marlins. The National League Central doesn't seem particularly strong, and in the West, you never know what's going to happen there. So, I think this rambling mess a bit is just that I'm looking forward to baseball starting up, regular season starting up, and I think the Mets are probably better than most people expect them to be.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you there. I mean, the key I think is their health, and we'll see. But lastly, Eric, why don't you tell everyone where they can actually pick up the Amazin Av Annual 2011?
You bet. You can order directly from our distributor, Active Sports. They've put out a number of great publications like the Bill James Handbook and the Hardball Times Annual. So you can buy it directly from them. It's a little bit more expensive, but if you buy from them, we actually get a bigger chunk because of the way selling books to retailers works. But you can order it from Amazon. It's not yet in stock, Amazon. Amazon will have it probably within a couple of days, but you can get it from them. You can order from BarnesandNoble.com. They'll get it shortly thereafter, and it'll be in Barnes & Noble stores probably within a week or so. And for those people looking for electronic formats, it's at the e-conversion company right now, who's converting it for Kindle, iPad, and Nook. So we've got everybody covered, so that should be available probably in another week or so as well.
Cool. Well, hey, Eric, again, congrats on the book, and thanks for taking some time to answer some questions. I'm a big fan of the work you guys do over there.
Thank you. Nice of you to have me.
All righty.
Thanks, Carl.